Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. We have two guest speakers this evening, Andy Nakan and Bruce Conk. Both are in their runoff candidates for the City Parish Council seat, District Number 6. Congratulations to both candidates. You're doing a good job getting the issues out there. We appreciate y'all coming by. At our next meeting, we anticipate that we'll have the runoff candidates for State Representative District 45, trying to finalize that. Our format this evening is that we're going to allow each guest speaker to present up to 5 minutes, and then it'll be followed by questions, and we'll rotate the questions, rotate the answers. So at this time, I'd ask that Andy Nakan introduce himself, talk about his qualifications, his background, and you have the floor for 5 minutes. Mike is going to time it.
It should be short. Good evening. I am Andy Nakan, and I want to thank y'all for having me here. I was raised in Lafayette. I've been here since 1957. I grew up and lived all my life in District 6. Went to school at Lady at Fatima. I have a degree from UL, and I've been working with Doug Asher for the last 26 years in building material sales. I've been selling building materials for 38 years. I have 4 years under my belt on the council. I enjoy serving the public. I enjoy being a public servant. I don't call myself a politician. And I am here and very open to phone calls. As many of you know, I'm in the phone book. I'm accessible at work. And I'm also accessible through the council office. I'm here to help solve problems. I've been doing that for the last 38 years in Lafayette, and I will continue doing that as long as you will let me. Again, anything at all, any problems, any questions you have come up, just let me know, and I'm glad to try to answer those questions as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Bruce, you get to come in and be second, but at closing, you'll have the option to go first or second in closing.
Good, thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's always good to be back. Thank you for the opportunity again. It's not much to be said. I think you guys have heard all about both Andy and myself during the campaign that led up to the primary. The turnout of the primary, I think, is a major concern as I move forward into the runoff. It's a sad commentary that Lafayette Parish voter turnout was 38%. And it was only that high, or that low, because of District 6 and District 8. District 6 had 43% turnout, District 8 had 48%. Without those two districts showing up, the voter turnout parish-wide would have been around 34%. So my task as I move forward in the runoff is to make certain that we have at least the same voter turnout as last time, and hopefully more. And that's important. Mr. Nakan got 43% of the vote. I got 41% of the vote. I received 33%. But of real interest was the fact that C.B. Zeller and Elisa Chasson got 26% of the vote. The difference between Andy and my vote, 540. The votes cast for C.B. and for Alicia, 1,900. That's a number of votes out there waiting to be grabbed and hopefully to vote on my behalf. But that's significant that we encourage a turnout, because we know that historically the voter turnout for a general election is anywhere from 10 to 15% below the primary. So I think it's my task, and I think it's also the task of Andy, to get the voters out, to overcome that apathy which occurred not only in Lafayette Parish, but throughout the state. There's a great article in the Advertiser today which talks about voter apathy. Is people are just becoming disenchanted with the whole process, that they have been discouraged by the mudslinging and the negative campaigning, and thankfully it has not occurred in our particular race. They're fed up, and they want something different but they don't want to show up at the polls to indicate what would be that difference. So again, my goal in the runoff is to assure that we at least have the turnout we had in the primary, if not increased. And of course, to convert that 1,900 votes that CV and Alicia received on my behalf. So I look forward to the runoff. It's been a fun ride since July the 6th, when I began walking and cycling through the neighborhood, and we've met a lot of people in that process. But I will tell you, as we look at the issues, it remains infrastructure. In the city of Lafayette is how do we move traffic more efficiently, and in the parish of Lafayette, how do we move water more efficiently? So I'm looking forward to addressing both of those issues.
Thank you, Bruce. We're going to open the meeting, or our speakers, to questions, and I'm going to lead off. And I'm going to ask each candidate to just generally describe what the geographic boundaries of City Parish District Number 6 is. And I'm going to ask, what percentage of District 6 do we have residents that have the equivalent of a high school degree or above? Bruce, we'll start with you.
Well, that's a good question. We base all of our information on approaching the voters on a registration list, which is provided by the Secretary of State. That list does not go into the educational points for the individual voters. Primarily, it's the party, where they live, and what is their contact information. I would guess, based on visiting the district for the past several months, that your highest educational level would be in Broadmoor Subdivision, Tanglewood, White Subdivision, St. Streets. Those are your more highly educated folks, and a lot of those folks, I've learned, are employed by the university. And of course, that higher level of education translates into a higher income level, which is reflective in the housing and in the assets of the neighborhood that draw people to those particular neighborhoods. So there's no real way of answering your question, other than I can only refer to the voter registration list, which gives us the very basic information we need to do our campaigning.
The boundaries of District 6, which we need to know, is all city. And basically, if you start at the corner of Johnston and Ambassador and head north on Ambassador to basically Eras Landry Road, and and goes to Cameron, it follows Eras Landry up to Cameron, and it takes a turn east on Cameron and follows the railroad tracks to University to St. Landry to Blackman Coliseum at the coulee there, that entails the area around the coulee, which is Minglewood Subdivision, back behind Bertrand Street, Amaryllis, the South College Shopping Center area, back up around the Horse Farm, down Johnson to Ducey, back to around right by Reds, and takes a right and goes back in that area behind LaFonda's, and entails that area all the way to the coulee over there on Rena, back up to Johnson and down back to Academy, Mount Vernon, and back in that subdivision, entailing Broadmoor, then back up to Ambassador by way of Broadmoor Drive. So it's a vast area of only city constituents. And alluding to what Bruce said, there is no demographics regarding education. You have a very mixed education there, levels in every area. You'll see some areas that do have the poor, less educated people. And we do have a lot of immigrants living in some of those areas there. So it's hard to identify what the education level is of the people, but I find the people here in that district, for the most part, to be informed and to be on top of what's going on in the central part of Lafayette. So I would say that their educational level is at least high school, with possibly a few years of college. But there are definitely some professors, some PhDs, some doctors, attorneys. We have a vast mix in that area, but to pinpoint an average education level is near impossible.
Thank you. I know both of y'all have spent a great deal of time crisscrossing the district leading up to the last election. What two important factors have you learned in your visits to the households which you think will make you a better public servant as City Parish Councilman District Number 6? Andy, we'll start with you.
Most of what I've run across in dealing with constituents is trying to get response on the level of the individual departments, in particular in dealing with the issues of roads, repairs, overlays, and then also in addition to the drainage regarding coulees and laterals that are in disrepair and are showing problems of infrastructure getting old and falling apart. So the big thing is to make sure that I, as a representative, get the information from you who are the eyes and make sure I get it to the department heads that are necessary and try to get them to focus on the issues that are so desperately needed in that district. In walking areas where you see sidewalks that are so chipped up that people actually fall down walking in front of their own homes. These are things that need to be addressed highly, and I put those as an importance, but it's to make them realize above us that these are things that are very important and dear to the constituents of that area. It's an old area. It's the oldest part of Lafayette, a lot of it. So it needs to be upgraded. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be repaired. So I think those are probably the two most important things, is the roads and sidewalks and drainage and infrastructure in that regard.
I concur with Andy. When I entered the race, I had my own ideas of what was a priority for the district. But as I walked that district, it really came down to something very simple. They wanted to know, how were we going to impact their daily lives when they drive their vehicles, when they take their morning walk, or in many cases when they cycle through the city. Those are very basic issues to the people, is how do we move the folks in Lafayette. And when we talk about the issues in the city of Lafayette and the issues out in the parish of Lafayette, they obviously are not the same. So we're not hearing so much about the bad drainage that exists in the outer parts and the unincorporated areas, or the bridges that are closing. 4 will close in next year, and we will probably not be able to reopen them. But we have to be aware, and I think in most cases people are aware, that when you close a bridge, much less 4 bridges, you're going to exacerbate the traffic situation, not only in Lafayette Parish, but in the city of Lafayette. So when we look at the traffic congestion, the one thing we need to address is the maintenance of the existing infrastructure. And this is a message that came through loud and clear from the constituents in District 6. They want to see an improvement in the infrastructure. And that infrastructure, in their mind, are the roads and the bridges that we have in the city of Lafayette that they cross every day. They want to have a sense of security when they cross those bridges. They want to have a sense of security and assurance that when they get in their vehicle to go to work in the morning, it's going to be a 20-minute commute and not an hour and a half because of some issue that all of a sudden presents itself in terms of a lack of maintenance. So we have to address that. Move traffic, help pedestrians help pedestrians move through the city as well as cyclists in a very safe manner. Those are the critical issues. There are a totally separate set of issues for the unincorporated area.
Over the last 10 years, our community has voted twice, and a majority of the voters have indicated that they do not desire to void or dissolve the present form of the city-parish consolidated government. what specific change, if any, to the city parish charter will you champion upon taking office? Please be specific as to what your proposed change and how will it improve the present form of representation for the city parish government.
That's my pet project. We do not have consolidated government in Lafayette Parish. We have a consolidation of services, which is administered by a parish president and his staff. What we don't have is a government exclusively for the city of Lafayette. When you look at consolidated government, you still have the parish of Lafayette and the city of Lafayette. You have budgets for each of those governing bodies, and you also have a municipally owned utility system in the city of Lafayette. So it's a very complicated issue. My concern with our existing system of government is that people who live outside of the city of Lafayette, who do not pay nor use Lafayette utility system electricity, water, or wastewater collection, or have access to LUS Fiber, are determining the rates that you and I, as citizens of Lafayette, pay on a monthly basis. There's 110,000 people who live outside the city of Lafayette who have representation on the city parish council that have a say-so in the everyday business of the city of Lafayette. And that is not the way that government is intended to function. What I'm looking for, and what I have been fighting for the last 8 years, is an independent council, just a council, for the city of Lafayette. And then the city of Lafayette Council would be part of a larger body that would oversee the entire area of the city of Lafayette and the unincorporated part of the parish. And please remember that Lafayette Consolidated Government does not include Broussard, Carencro, Scott, Youngsville. They're not in consolidated government. They will never be in consolidated government. When the law was passed by the state legislature in 1992, it specifically exempted the other municipalities. It's not that they opted out, they were never included. And yet, to this day, they have their own council and their own mayor, and they vote for the parish president, and they vote for a representative on the Lafayette City Parish Council. There's something wrong with that approach. I still favor a mayor for the city of Lafayette, but I'm realistic. I understand that the one success that we've had out of consolidated government is the consolidation of services. You need an administrator elected parish-wide to oversee the day-to-day operations of those services. Therefore, I would support the continuation of a parish president. But I insist that Lafayette, the city of Lafayette, deserves, requires, and should demand its own form of government, just as exists in Broussard, Carencro, Dusson, Scott, and Youngsville.
The form of government we have here, Lafayette Consolidated Government, is a touchy thing. Twice has been voted on, twice has been approved by an overwhelming majority of the people. It was never meant to make Lafayette self-governing as a city. It was always meant to consolidate services to save people money. And we have not consolidated services as we need to. That is the big drawback right now of consolidated government. In order to get Lafayette's own governance, members of Mr. Conk in particular and other people suggested creating a body with only 5 voting members, which means that you would have 3 men who would control the money of the city of Lafayette. And that scares me, because I've seen too much going on with 9 people and the controlling of the votes for 5 and 6. So I don't think reducing the size of the legislative body to 5 is a solution. And in addressing the situation of 9 people voting, presently at this time, of the 9, which they consider 4 as parish guys, 1 gentleman does live in the city limits of Lafayette. He does pay city taxes, and he does have other businesses and residences here. Another one owns more than one residence in the city of Lafayette. So they all have skin in the game. So they're not voting, and no one is voting to hurt Lafayette. No one is voting to hurt utilities. And I'd like to have somebody point that out to me where these votes have hurt anybody in the city of Lafayette. I have yet to find anybody who can show me anywhere that the city of Lafayette has ever been hurt by a vote of the council. So I don't think the solution is to split the government up. I think the solution is a more continuum of the consolidation of services. For instance, fire protection. Why not have a parish-wide fire protection? We could do something where everybody could unify it and get a better rating for the whole parish. Most of the outlying areas have volunteer fire departments. We'll never see a total consolidation of public safety, police services, but there are other things that we could do that maybe could unite the departments. But there's a lot yet to be done, and I don't necessarily think changing in the legislative bodies is going to make a difference. I think where it goes to is being more fiscally responsible with the money that's out there, both city and parish-wide. And changing the voting bodies to 5 people, where 3 would control the vote, I don't think is a solution. Thank you.
Okay, my next question. Can you commit to supporting any reasonable proposition by LUS Director Terry Huball in expanding the LUS Fiber network to the unincorporated areas of Lafayette Parish, to the other municipalities in Lafayette Parish, or the areas beyond the artificial parish boundaries, if Terry Huball, the Director of LUS Fiber, can show that that expansion would be profitable? Andy, I think it's your turn.
Sure. I think the expansion of a thriving business is always important, and it's going to create more profit. I mean, if it's saleable, if it's going to make money, then certainly they can afford to expand and move out into other areas. And I think it'd be a great thing to do. But we have had indications from other municipalities and people in outlying areas that say, we're not going to pay for fiber. We don't want it if we got to pay for it. And right now we have the areas in the city of Lafayette, which are in the city limits, that fiber can't afford to expand to that. They can't afford to pay to go there. So the idea of expansion of fiber is kind of a moot issue until somebody can decide who's going to pay for it. Because fiber can't do it. The municipalities won't do it. So we're sitting here in limbo talking about expansion, which may never happen because there's no money there for it. I think it'd be great if it would do it. There's nothing like getting more people on board to help share the load and pay for the bills, and that's what expansion does. But the bottom line is who's going to pay for the expansion, and there's no answers for that yet. Thank you.
When you as voters approved LUS Fiber, it was with the clear understanding that the service would be provided only within the city of Lafayette, and that no consideration would be given to expanding past those boundaries until and unless our obligations financially were met and the responsibility and the obligation to provide full service within the city of Lafayette was met. There has been some interest outside the city about fiber. Specifically, the town of Youngsville has indicated there may be some interest there. LUS Fiber can certainly benefit from the economics of scale. We have the head-end operation here in Lafayette. That is one of the more expensive aspects of setting up any fiber system. It is in place. This is the point where the video comes in, the video goes out to the rest of Lafayette. We could very easily provide service to the other communities. We could easily provide it to the rest of the state, as long as they are willing to provide the backbone. And that is the fiber optic cable that transmits the signal. It is the least expensive aspect of providing fiber service. It can be done. But as Andy has pointed out, until we have done what we have promised to do within the city of Lafayette, then we should not consider that. But I will tell you that the day of making a decision is not that far away. The fiber, LUS Fiber is growing financially, it's becoming more secure, and we have the ability to provide the service outside the city of Lafayette if it's requested, and if the recipient is willing to meet certain conditions, certain criteria. They would have to fund the bill for, in my opinion at least, for the backbone. Doesn't mean they'll fund our LUS Fiber system as a whole. It does mean that they will carry their share of the burden. We will provide the service. We will take on the responsibility of providing the technology to keep it running and to assure them that they get their cable TV and their internet continues to operate trouble-free. Right now, no, we are not at that point. Is it something to be ruled out in the near future? Probably, but the near future in my mind is only 2 to 3 to 5 years.
My next question, what are your 2 top priorities upon assuming office that you believe can be accomplished within the first 12 to 18 months? I think it's your turn.
That's a tough question. And the reason for it is, one of the things that I learned when I served on the council was you had to count to 5 before you proceeded on any issue. You had to count your vote and 4 others. We're going to have a reconstituted council. We know that we will have at least 2 new members, possibly 4. That's a huge change in the makeup of the council. So as we move forward, certainly I'd like to address the charter, but I have no clue at this time who's going to be on that council to assist me in that effort. It's something I will know on November the 22nd. But there are other issues that will need to be addressed almost immediately. The parish of Lafayette is broke. And if you have not looked at the budget lately, there's no disputing. The general fund in 1996 was $12 million. In this last budget, it was $16 million. Sounds like an increase. But we are carving out more and more out of the general fund to finance those operations of the parish which are not adequately provided for by the millage that has been approved by the parish voters. I'll give you an example. The Lafayette Parish Courthouse, referred to as the courthouse complex. We are still operating under the same parish property tax that was approved when the jail was on the 7th floor of the Lafayette Parish Courthouse. In 1984, we built the 5-story jail in downtown Lafayette. We did not increase the property millage. So therefore, that property millage, granted, it does generate more dollars now than it did back then, is not adequate to meet the needs of the correctional center. We need to look at the operations of the jail, of the courthouse, of the court system. We talk about saving money. I think we need to look at how much is coming out of the general fund to provide the revenue needed for those specific areas. Scrub that area. And if necessary, and I know this will be used against me, if necessary, we go back to the voters and we ask you to right-size the property tax. If you're not generating enough money to finance the very basics of Lafayette Parish government, then you have an issue. When you start going into the general fund, you have other issues. Then you can't clean dishes. You can't repair potholes. You can't improve drainage, because those are provided primarily by the general fund. So until you relieve the pressure on the general fund by right-sizing the property taxes to address those obligations, those mandates under which the parish of Lafayette operates, then we're going to continue to have some issues with parish financing. And please appreciate the fact I talk about parish finances. The city of Lafayette fiscally is fairly strong. We're about to issue over, I think, $60 million in bonds because we have a robust sales tax in Lafayette. We do not have an adequate revenue stream in the parish of Lafayette to float any bonds anytime in the near future. And when you can't afford bonds, you don't build new infrastructure. That's the bottom line. And unless we acknowledge that we have an issue in the parish will continue to suffer. There are 68,000 people who live outside any municipality who are underserved. Andy talks about fire protection. He's absolutely correct. The fire insurance rates for the residents of the unincorporated area are about to increase. And they will increase significantly because we do not provide that area with adequate fire protection. So the parish of Lafayette, the unincorporated area, in my mind, is the critical issue that the council and the new parish president has to address, not in the first 18 months, in the first 6 months, because that's when you begin preparing the budget for the next fiscal year. And that budget comes to the council in June, and it's got to be passed by October 31. That, to me, is critical.
He was so long, wasn't there?
You can take as much time
The
as you need.
two critical
Yeah, two
issues.
top priorities
Two top priorities.
within the 12 to 18
Well,
months.
that's pretty easily addressed because the first priority is fiscal responsibility. And that really needs to be addressed heavily. We've had a lot of spending of dollars unnecessarily on things that I don't think we need to go to. Just alone, this past budget, they have budgeted $7.4 million to do a section of West Main for beautification and street improvements from St. John to Lee. $7.4 million. So I think the first thing we need to do in order to address the money issues is to address fiscal responsibility. And I think with this new administration moving forward, along with the fiscally responsible councilmen that are on board, I think we'll be able to do that. In addressing the issues of the dollars outside the parish, every time a business comes into the parish, it's usually on the outskirts of one of the cities. And if it's a profitable business, what's the first thing that city does? Incorporates it. There goes the dollars. The parish just lost some more money. And that's been going on for years and years and years. So sit here and blame the parish for money woes, it's kind of misleading. The people in the unincorporated areas, as well as in outlying cities, established those sales tax dollars that are record revenues for Lafayette. Where do you think they spend their money? They come in here. They don't have the businesses in those outlying areas, in Youngsville, in Scott, in Karen Crow that we have here in Lafayette. Those dollars are spent here. So those people do help support us. They do help with their infrastructure dollars. So we need to look at somehow open a line of governance where we can all work together instead of trying to divide the parish and the city. Something's got to be done. Just the Public Works Department alone right now. It used to be that monies that were collected in the parish were spent in the parish, and monies in the city were spent in the city. It's not so anymore. People that pay parish tax dollars in Scott, Youngsville, Karen Crow, normally those dollars used to be spent in the parish. Now they're being spent in the city of Lafayette because the city of Lafayette is considered part of the parish, which is true. But it used to be a gentleman's agreement, I'd like to say, that those dollars were never spent in the city. Well, they are now. And you look around the parish and see how little those dollars are actually being spent in the parish, and that's the reason why we have bad roads, bad bridges, and things along that line. It's time to realize that we need to right-size the millages, as Bruce said. There's no doubt about that. We have some areas of the departments that are actually collecting a ton of money with surpluses as compared to roads, bridges, infrastructure that we desperately need. And that money just sits there in surplus. So we need to look hard at fiscal responsibility, and that needs to be done immediately. There's no doubt about that. With the new budget coming in, the council starts reviewing it in July. By the end of September, we have to have, actually the beginning of September, it has to be in place to go back for final approval. So those are things that need to be addressed right away, and I assume that with this new administration, that is going to be their first priority also. As far as anything other than that, we have to get a right growth pattern where we have free market growth, where we allow our builders and our developers to do what's best for this city, as they have in other areas that are so successful, such as Houston. Let them decide what's going to make the most money for everybody, because when that happens, everybody wins. The rising tide floats all boats. I think that can happen. We need to keep government out of decision-making as to who's going to be the winners and who's going to be the losers. It's time to let the businesses do their thing and take over and let them make their own decisions. Thank you.
This is my last question. What advice or words of encouragement would you give to the young residents of our community on how to be active in making Lafayette and this region a better place to live?
I found in my 61 years, and I'm still learning every day, that the best way to learn to enhance your own personal life is to get involved in various things in Lafayette. And I'm not talking just about getting involved in the government. I'm talking about getting involved in your community groups, your church groups, your civic activities, Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Clubs. There's so much that you can gain by giving back. And I would advise any young couple coming into town, anyone in town who has the energy and the time, to please pick out some group that they can enhance. Use your talents in a special way, and you'll be surprised what you'll get back by just giving a little bit. And it makes a big difference. As someone told me tonight, you'll never know what the influence you have on other people is down the road. And just that little bit of time you spend with them can be such a large influence in their life. And it's something that you may never perceive, but they'll remember it, and they'll take it with them the rest of their life. So involvement makes a big difference. Just get involved. Don't sit at home watching TV. Find something to do and go do it.
Andy's correct. Get involved. Find something to do. I have nothing but the greatest amount of respect and admiration for the two young women who took part in the District 6 campaign for the primary. C.V. Zeller and Elisa Chasson, both young women, both moms, both have a vested interest in our community, as we all should. They had the courage to stand up and go to the people and say, look, this is what we believe in, and we're asking that you consider putting us on the City Parish Council so that we can achieve some of our goals. The sad commentary is there aren't enough young people taking that stance. This past election, we had more women running for elected office than ever before. We already have assurance that we will have a woman on the council, possibly another young woman on the council. That is so gratifying that the populace has realized we need to look at what is our future. And people such as Alicia and C.V. are our future. I've been fortunate to be involved as a member emeritus, okay, because I didn't quite make the 40-year-old cutoff, in 705. Great group, very active group, hundreds of young people participating, under 40. If you'll be paying attention to the Daily Advertiser in the past couple of days, in the coming weeks, they are naming their 20 under 40 nominees. Another opportunity for people of that age group to get involved. That's on the civic side. You can't ignore the government side. We have about 36 boards and commissions on which we are always seeking folks to serve. Some of them are not that glamorous. The Evangeline Thruway Redevelopment Team, I think we've been trying to find applicants for that particular organization for years. We can't completely fill it. But what if you had the opportunity to serve on the Lafayette Board of Control, Lafayette Library Board of Control? Wow, have you seen our libraries in Lafayette? They exist today because a group of folks back in the early 2004, I think it was, had the courage actually before 2004, during the Walter Como administration, had the courage to go to the voters and say, look, we need better libraries. We are asking you to approve a bond issue, X amount of dollars. We will deliver our promises of 4 branches and renovation of the main branch under budget and on time. And they have. And it was driven by volunteers. I serve on the Planning Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. 5 of us serve there. We're going to hopefully expand that to 7 with a proposition coming up on November 21. We're all volunteers. No volunteers on boards and commissions in Lafayette Parish are compensated. None. Other important bodies, the Airport Commission, Lafayette Economic Development Authority. Those folks make decisions every day about which you hear nothing, but they influence your lives. They're the ones that push through the 1-cent limited sales tax for the terminal. So there are numerous opportunities to get involved. We just have to make those opportunities aware to the local government, the local populace, and especially those people under 40. I'm not asking to serve on the council to serve my interest. I'm retired. I'm serving the future of the folks under 40. They are the ones who will benefit from what this council, whomever is serving on the council, will do during the next 4 years. That to me is the significance of being a member on an elected body. How will you influence the future? They are the ones in which we should have a vested interest.
Larry, I understood that you had a few questions. If you want to come forward, you're welcome. And anyone else after Larry's questions, welcome. Ms. LeBlanc, I know you always have a few questions. So.
Now you're getting kind of snarky there. Well, welcome to both of you. It's going to be interesting on the runoff just to see how everything happens. Just a few quick comments. You led off with drainage. Oh, drainage is a problem, but not according to the advertiser. To them, it's education and schools and bridges. But yes, drainage is a big problem in Lafayette. And we're lucky this year. We didn't have any really bad weather. We're still having absolutely golden weather for fall. We're going into winter now. Sidewalks. Oh my goodness. My front yard sees 20 people a day walk through it because it's right on Vital Street, and we have no sidewalks. I just have a big, nice, wide ditch there. I really need to fill that thing in. I'd like to recommend that we put everything on hold. We just don't have the income coming in because the price of oil is down, because people don't care, and the shopping has dropped off. I think we ought to just put everything on hold for a while. Quit expanding. Let's just sit back. You said what, $6 million in bonds? 36 million. That's a good bit of money, even by today's standards. Do we really need another 36 million in bonds, or can we pay off the old bonds and get our credit rating back up? You're going to say that's kind of adolescent approach, but no, I think we ought to just put things on hold, quit spending a while. Joey Durrell's term, infrastructure. Everywhere I go, I hear politicians talking about infrastructure. Guess what? We had a pretty good system even before Joey Durrell came along. I have several voting reservations. It seems like y'all are holding back and you're not voting on the real issues. Those last 4 amendments was on the last election. They were interesting, but they really weren't earth-shaking. Why not put some amendments on the election that people really want to hear? Ask simple questions like, do you want to have better drainage? Yes, no. Do you want to have better roads? Yes, no. How do you want to get this? And then let's give them 4 options here. Put something that seriously on the next serious amendments on the 21st that people can relate to. Those last 4 amendments, it was milquetoast. Didn't cover all that much. Would like to work with you, would like to work with you or without you as the case may be, but we've just got to change some things around here because we're deeply in debt and just going deeper because we're still spending money like we did in the boom times. Back in the boom times, we had plenty of money. It came in from various industries, taxes, stuff like that. We haven't got that anymore. It's time to step back and hold a little while. Thank you.
Is that a question?
Something for you to chew on.
You get to comment,
Any comment?
and then Bruce, and then you get to comment. Is it your turn?
All good comments, but we need to break them down. While I support better education in Lafayette Parish, the Lafayette City Parish Council has no authority over the educational system. However, that does not preclude the council from working together with the school board to plan for the future. As a member of the Planning Commission, I was surprised that last year we approved 4, I wasn't surprised that we approved, but as a result of our approving last year 4 major subdivisions on Bay Road School Road, averaging 200 homes per subdivision, that the school system was not even apprised of that officially. 200 homes, I don't know, 2 kids per home, kid and a half per home. That's going to mean some 600 to 800 students hitting the school system in 5 years, if not immediately. We need to better prepare ourselves based on the existing data we have. As far as the constitutional amendments, thank goodness I'm not in the state legislature, and therefore I did not propose those constitutional amendments. We do have 2 amendments to the charter coming up on November 21st that you could describe as milquetoast. One is to change the name of the parish president to mayor president of Lafayette, and the other is to increase the membership of the Lafayette Planning and Zoning Commission from 5 to 7. In looking at how people view different issues, that's not something to be considered by amendments to either a charter or to a constitution. That has got to be done through a polling system. And I can tell you, based on the elections that I have seen, the polling systems are very strong, very robust, and they put out the questions and they get the feedback from the people. In most cases, they're right on target. So if we were to do anything, let's improve our polling system and how we get some feedback from the folks that we serve.
Mr. Conk is correct in that, Larry, in that the amendments did have nothing to do with local government, and the educational system is through the school board, of which we can encourage and participate as best we can with infrastructure and proper roadways and things to be able to get to these new schools and provide them with the means to be able to build and access these areas that need new schools. As far as for opinions of what needs to be done from the people, well, that's where we come in. That's where we need to be contacted. That's where we need to have more open meetings at the council meetings or individual meetings, or even the participation of the people coming to the different conferences, the zoning meetings, the public works meetings. These are all public meetings that people can show up to voice their opinions, to voice their concerns. Don't be afraid to come speak to your representatives, please, because I always tell people, you're my eyes and my ears. You know, I need you to bring that to me so that I can help you. Help me to help you is what I say, you know. If you can do that, then I can try to help you. But it's an effort, it's a team effort to get involved, to inform us and to express your concerns and your opinions. And in many cases, it's easy to provide evidence. You know, during the course of the day, I'm lucky enough to have a job where I do pass by certain problem areas and check on things with many constituents and see what's going on. I find it easy to do. The hardest part is to get a response, and they always say, well, we'll have to look at it, we'll have to find the money, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's hard to get that. I mean, I have a project right now, it's been sitting budgeted for the last 2 years, and they have yet to sign the check to spend the money on it. That goes back, and it goes to sidewalks and drainage. That goes back to the administration. They write the checks, we appropriate the money. If the check's unwritten, the money's not spent. And those are areas that need to be addressed. So we have, like I said, get everybody together, get a team effort. Don't be afraid to come forward and speak to your representatives. Get involved. That's the biggest thing that we can do to find out what's important and where we need to go with it. And don't ask us to come out there. You know, I don't mind doing that. I don't mind sharing time with you guys. That's part of the pleasures I have in getting around and doing things. I've been doing that for 38 years. It's helped me to help you.
Any other questions?
Either of you go by disgustingly slow road boulevard, I call it, Harwell and Robley occasionally? Both of you? Well, you're like me then. During the peak hours, you sometimes have 12 to 15 cars that have to stop at every dead-burn corner at a four-way stop sign, which is repulsingly disgusting. There is no justification whatsoever for going down Robley and Harwell with all these four-way stop signs at every darn corner. I go by that way 3 or 4 times a week. There's hardly ever a car coming crosswise. Several years ago, the traffic director did a study for about a month, and he said there were several million carbon emissions ejected into the air because of this, and thousands of gallons of gas wasted because of the unnecessary four-way stop signs on Harwell and Robley Drive. What can be done about that?
Ray, I agree with you on the how we refer to our government as consolidated government. You're absolutely correct. It's city parish government, and I believe that I've made my concerns about that very clear. Regarding Harwell and Robley, that actually goes through the entire boundary of District 6, because we start at Ambassador Caffrey, and it goes through Robley, goes to Harwell, and goes all the way to Camellia. So yeah, that is an issue. I will tell you, when I was living on Grand Avenue, my first home that I owned, 190 Grand Avenue, it was the police jury at the time that put in those stop signs. So they have been in there for that long of a period of time.
Because one of the members of the police jury lived in that district and they wanted it that way.
It certainly wasn't because I was living in the district, that's sure. And then the other thing about involvement, one of the things that I practiced when I was on the council, which surprised me, I come from a business background, and I believe in customer service. Andy does the same thing. We have a very efficient system for our departments to respond to requests for services. And a good council member will track those responses. What I did, and what I'd like to see all of the council members do, is not only follow up to questions such as you posed recently, but also to do a customer response survey after the fact. I had an administrative assistant whom I asked, when she had the time, to go through our, at that time it was known as an RFS, I think it's referred to a little bit differently today, go through every request and just arbitrarily pick one and call that person and ask them, were you pleased with the service? Was the person who provided the service respectful, courteous, and did they do their job professionally? What, if anything, would you suggest that we do differently? That is basic customer service. That is basic involvement. And that's what we need to do more of. You cannot run government like a business. You can run government in a business-like fashion. And I think we need to take that approach across the board, at the council level and at the administration. There was a comment earlier about there's not much we can do about certain things. I disagree. The one thing that the council has never taken advantage of is the authority that it has in the budget. You can remove things from the budget. You can defund things in the budget. And if you have 6 votes that support that move, you can override a veto of the parish president. The city parish council needs to be more assertive. It needs to take a leadership role. And I think this is our opportunity with new leadership at all the levels coming into play next year. We just need to be more assertive, more responsive, and more involved.
It is Lafayette City Parish government. You are correct. There is no such thing as a Lafayette consolidated government because Lafayette Parish is not totally consolidated. You're right in saying that, Ray. And there is references in the charter of Lafayette City Parish government, but they say is to further along Lafayette consolidated government. It's just to shorten, I think, the wording is all it is. Robley and Harwell, what a thoroughfare. You know, that's what connectivity does. And unfortunately creates systems and situations where neighborhoods are no longer quiet and peaceful. And the reason those 4-way stops are there and probably will stay there is for public safety. To make sure that nobody just speeds down those streets. Although there was a resident killed not that long ago in Robley because there was someone speeding from stop sign to stop sign and ran a stop sign and killed a lady driver. I don't remember her name at this point, but it was a horrible situation. So they serve a purpose, albeit they are a pain in the butt. They're just not much fun to drive through, but the way I look at it is I drive through, I idle there, and I idle to the next one. And I just let the car do the work. I make sure I hit the complete stop and go, right? But to change that, a roundabout system may work, but you'd have to have more land, which would mean taking up private property there to do that. It's a tough situation when you create connectivity through subdivisions because that's what happens. You get people that get exacerbated with traffic.
Thank y'all very much for coming. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. That'll be Monday, November 16th. See y'all then. Thank you.